Welcome to What Matters to Me and Why, to the Interviews on Diversity segment. I'm here with Joel Veenstra, Associate Chair of Production in the Department of Drama in the UCI Claire Trevor School of the Arts. Professor Veenstra, thank you so much for taking time to be with us.
Thank you.
Please, could you tell us, what does diversity, equity, and inclusion mean to you?
To me, diversity, equity, inclusion is fundamental to what we need today. The world's continually getting smaller, and we have more access to one another and therefore more impact on one another. And we need to make space for one another and be aware as we have more information than ever before about what the nature of our impact has been. I'm continually amazed and surprised at new forms of inequity and disinclusion and injustice that are happening that I was not aware of before, purely as a byproduct of us being able to communicate more easily now and more information getting out and more information being shared across different cultures and different groups. And it's so important that as we become aware of these issues and elements, that we try to empower folks that are different than ourselves and include their voices and their experience in the process, because having a society where one group of people or one particular thought pattern dominates every other is just not ideal, and it doesn't produce the best work. It doesn't produce the best outcomes. I think specifically in my area of drama and production, the entire production process is based around this concept of people with a wide variety of different skill sets and points of views coming together to create one common goal, one common production. And it can only be done when people have equal space to share and give their perspectives. And the best productions happen when we're all bringing our ideas together and we're integrating them and seeing how each different area and each different lens actually makes the mosaic of the whole a beautiful thing. And it's tricky. It's tricky, but I think we need to acknowledge these different experiences that individuals have and different perspectives. And that's one of the missions we have here, especially at the public university. But it also feels to me like it's an ethical calling as human beings in terms of how we care for each other, care for our world, and help each other move together through the world. And it's also a little bit difficult because it's one thing to say that I want to have an equitable inclusion and diverse institution. It's another thing to actually take that on and personally take that on as a challenge and nudge against the ways that we may have been taught or the models that we've been demonstrated to in terms of how things should be, and try to really examine, is this structure actually serving everyone? Or do we need to upend or readjust the survey in terms of how folks are engaging with the world? And I'm seeing this across the theater and entertainment industry as a number of institutions are facing dynamic outcries of people saying, look, you've been racist, you've not treated us well, you've not provided us opportunities to have equal footing as anyone else. And it's heartbreaking because of these revelations and the gross inequities over time that have been systematic in so many institutions. But it's also wonderful in that people are able to share their spaces and share their voices in terms of their experience so that actual change can happen. And nobody really likes change. I mean, change is a very difficult thing, and thinking about adjusting to things that are different than you and have different perspectives doesn't necessarily feel good because it's hard work. And so sometimes we need to slow down and think about what that hard work means and invest in that if we're truly dedicated to being an inclusive world, an inclusive society, inclusive institutions. Again, in the theater world, there's a lot of talk about inclusivity. There's a lot of talk and prioritization of how do we be inclusive. But when you drill down to some of the actual things that people are doing and how they actually do inclusive actions, sometimes they're just to demonstrate that, look, we're trying to be inclusive, versus actually thinking about the ramifications and talking to people about what those impacts are and actually engaging with folks to ask them, how is this working for you? Is this actually providing more opportunity and more of a culture of inclusion, or is this actually just lip service to what the situation is? And one of the things that I thought was really interesting that I've just been learning this past year is that it's not just about letting people join us or join me in what I think is good, but it's about making space to allow others to define what is good and us having that conversation. And ultimately, even though there's a great history in our country and in our institutions and a number of different areas of a lot of inequity and a lot of systematic racism and biases and challenges, we may want to change all of that, but ultimately the first step is ourselves and thinking about who we are. So I've tried to be very dedicated and committed to trying to take steps every day to see how I can be anti-racist, anti-bias, and be more inclusive and more open to folks that think differently than me and to engage with the world differently than me, because I think it's good for our society. I think about innovation, and so much of innovation comes from when you have different ideas coming together, and in terms of how do we move our whole system forward to address so many of the major challenges that are happening in our world today. And I think it can't just come from one perspective. It really needs a multitude of different people that have a wide variety of different perspectives that both acknowledge and appreciate these different perspectives, and not demonizing or diminishing in any way different perspectives, but just having conversations about how can we make the space and the system work for everyone.
Professor Veenstra, thank you so much for sharing your perspective and sitting with us here to share your insights into diversity, equity, inclusion, and how you put them into practice here on campus at UCI.
Thank you.